Welcome back and thanks for tuning in. I'm Ian and you're watching Opinion. Do you like toys? Do you like 80s toys? Recent documentaries like The Toys That Made Us got me thinking about toys that I grew up with. I feel lucky enough to have come from the golden age of the action figure. Looking back all these years later, I can definitely appreciate the imagination and the playtime that all my childhood toys sparked. But I have wondered from time to time, did these toys actually box us in and keep us limited to a very narrow range of stereotypical male roles? Were we expected to grow up to be he-men for everybody else? Well, that's what I'm here to do today. Take some of the best toy lines from the 80s and put them under the microscope to see what was really going on. And stay tuned at the end when I reveal my favorite He-Man figure. Make sure you've got all your accessories and your trusty animal sidekick with you, because here we go. Now, I've heard this explored plenty of times on the female side of things. Brands like My Little Pony, Strawberry Shortcake, and Barbie are just a few of the girls' brands that were often accused of keeping things just a very comfortable pink, pretty, and perfumed. So some parents claim they undermined girls' imaginations and kept them strictly limited to things that were just fluffy and fun. But have you ever really looked at this from the boys' side of the toy aisle? Preteen boys were probably one of the most, if not the most, preyed upon demographic by toy companies in the 80s. Most anybody would be able to list off the top of their head the most popular boys' toy lines of the 1980s. Star Wars, He-Man, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, G.I.Joe, Transformers. The list goes on. You get the idea. With the skyrocketing divorce rates creating a whole new generation of very independent latchkey kids with a lot of extra time on their hands, corporations and toy companies knew they had a captive audience to sell their products to. And in addition to the toy stores being chock full of merchandise, the television was well stocked with a bevy of entertainment for kids. If you were in grade school or middle school, watching cartoons after school or on Saturday mornings was the thing to do. For boys in particular, there were a couple of cultural themes in the 1980s that were making a big impact on television, film, and the toy industry. The topic of the arms race in the Reagan years brought the military and warfare into sharp focus in American culture. So, time to dust off and call in a real American hero to keep our country safe from enemies. Another theme that kind of re-emerged and wedged its way into both the gaming and the toy world was what I like to call Wizards and Warriors culture. Not to mention that the game Dungeons and Dragons itself had found its way into nerd dens across the United States. Most, if not all, the popular toy lines for boys in the 1980s built their narratives on fighting and warfare. With those two themes pretty much leading the way of pop culture tidal wave, toy companies were left with two choices for boys: be a soldier or be a warrior. In the simplest terms, it meant that every action figure you got was coming with either a gun or a sword, and every character you liked either had a uniform or rippling muscles and half naked. Even the ugliest mofo had better arms than I've ever had. I'm not going to get asked to prom over this guy. He-Man was the perfect lightning in a bottle that combined Wizards and Warriors culture, a little bit of sci-fi, and warfare all into one perfect toy line. You could fight with a spear, you could fight with a sword, you could fight with a laser gun, hell, you could even club somebody's head in. Doesn't matter anymore. And there is no crying in He-Man. Except for Tila, and sometimes the sorcerers. So if you're a boy, you had to be just like your action figures, strong, durable, and built like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And if you were anything like me as a preteen, that was a lot to live up to. Bigger was definitely better all around. And when martial arts resurfaced, holy crap, everybody was kung fu fighting. So once we had karate thrown onto the pop culture pile, the role-playing opportunities for boys expanded even more. Now you could be a military person, a heroic warrior, or a martial arts badass. Thanks a lot, Daniel-san. The idea of accidentally coming in contact with some radioactive ooze or a vat of chemicals spawned a new kind of hero. Now you weren't just a warrior, you were a mutant warrior. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the Toxic Avenger toys were perfect examples of this. Once the idea of the mechanized hero passed beyond the boundaries of Asian pop culture and infiltrated the United States toy market, a whole new dimension was added to Playtime. As young boys, now we could imagine we didn't even need to be flesh and blood anymore to be an ultimate badass. We were fighting machines. On some levels, that could have been telling boys that there's no time for emotion, just a mechanical, no-nonsense approach to justice and the fight for good against evil. Even playsets and environments that accompanied these toys, where a young boy like me could either act out my favorite scenes from a cartoon or create new adventures with my action figures, were not exactly soft, welcoming places. I mean, did you ever see a boys playset called Muffin Land? Hell no. we're going to Castle Grayskull. Or imagine putting your action figures in a toy called the Jaunty Jalopy. Screw that, we're taking the Thunderhawk. As boys, even if we weren't playing with some of the most popular toys of the time in the 1980s, toy companies were still trying to convince us that our closest companions should be street sharks and goblins. Boglins. And even if we weren't playing with action figures at all, we were usually playing with some kind of dirt or slime or monster. So that definitely sent a message that there wasn't going to be anything cute and cuddly about growing up to be a guy. So in the end, what did we learn? Man up, learn a martial art, and go kick ass. Do I really think any of these toy lines caused any harm or oppressed boys or kept them boxed in? No. I think kids ultimately just want to understand the world a little better, and any toys that empower them to make them feel like they're making sense of things is okay with me. If anything, it probably broke some of the previous stereotypes of the 9-to-5 dad who was the hero of the house. To me, 80s toys showed young fellas that they could be the hero of any world, at any time within their imagination. It certainly gave me a sense of control and positivity as a young kid, during what could be considered a pretty chaotic decade. So what's your opinion of some of the toys I mentioned? Do you think they boxed kids in and gave them only a narrow scope? Or do you think they were an avenue to explore and imagine? And as promised, my favorite He-Man figure? Stratos. He didn't come with any accessories or weapons. You want to know why? Because he can freaking fly. And that's all you need. Please don't forget to take a moment to like this video and subscribe. There are more on the way. Thanks for watching and stay tuned.